Liam, hitting a bar with Julian tonight. Don't wait up. I stared at the text for 3 seconds and replied with a simple, okay. She replied instantly. I ignored it and went back to revising my game script. At 3 in the morning, Khloe Montgomery came home smelling of alcohol. She pushed the door open and froze. I wasn't waiting for her in the living room like I usually did, and I hadn't bombarded her phone with calls. She hesitated for a long time before leaning in. Aren't you going to ask who I went with? I kept typing, not even lifting my head. Didn't you say you were with Julian? You're not mad. Why would I be mad? He's a guy best friend. It's normal. Chloe's face changed. She opened her mouth to say something, but finally just squeezed out. Are you? Okay, I was fine. I just spent the last 3 years finally learning how not to love her. The living room radiator was burning hot. On the coffee table, the hangover soup I'd made had completely cooled, a thin, unappetizing layer of grease congealing on its surface. I stared at that layer of grease for a long time until my phone screen lit up on the table. It wasn't a call. It was a live location shared by Khloe. The icon for the neon lounge flashed twice, then went dark. This was an old habit of hers. Every time she went to a club, she'd send me her location, as if that alone could cancel out my worrying. In the past, I would have called her back immediately, practically begging to know what time she was coming home and if I needed to pick her up. I picked up my phone, opened our chat, and typed, received. Then I deleted it. I typed 3 more words, have a good time, deleted again. Finally, I just replied with a single word, okay, sent. I set the phone face down on the table, got up, went to the kitchen, and dumped the soup down the sink. The porcelain bowl clinking against the stainless steel sink sounded exceptionally loud in the empty apartment tonight. It was what I had prepared for her tonight. I diced tomatoes, cracked a couple of eggs, and tossed in some thick artisan pasta. She'd always said she liked the chewy texture. Now the pasta was bloated, congealed into a mushy clump with the tomatoes. The faucet was running, and as I watched the mush wash down the drain, I suddenly remembered last winter. It was early morning, just like this, and she was at the neon lounge, just like this. She drank too much and wasn't picking up her phone. I rode my e-bike all over the city looking for her in the freezing rain, wiped out, and smashed my knee against the curb, tearing a huge gash in my leg. When I finally found her, she and Julian were sitting on the steps outside the bar, smoking and laughing hysterically. The first thing she said when she saw me limping over was, "Are you being serious right now? I'm just having a drink with a friend. Are you being serious right now?" And I had actually apologized. I said I was sorry, that I was just too worried, and that it wouldn't happen again. It wouldn't happen again. I put the bowl in the dishwasher, dried my hands, and walked back to the living room. My computer was still on. The game script was paused at the climax of the 3rd act. The protagonist was a long-suffering assassin who had endured humiliation and stayed in hiding for 10 years, just for revenge. I stared at the little pixelated character on the screen for a long time, and thought he looked pretty stupid. My phone lit up again. I glanced at it on instinct. It was a message in the work group chat asking if the materials for tomorrow's meeting were ready. I replied, all set, and then opened my phone's notes app. The to-do list titled Detoxing from Khloe sat there quietly. Item 1. Stop checking her location. Check. Item 2. No more late-night snacks for her. I looked toward the spotless kitchen and mentally checked that off too. Item 3. Don't engage when she brings up Julian. Item 4. I scrolled down. There were 12 items in total, representing all the pathetic subservience I had accumulated over the past 3 years. Everyone was a slap in the face. Everyone was an, "Are you being serious right now?" At 2:17 a.m., there was a noise outside the door. The sound of a key jabbing into the lock, twisting again, and failing to open it. Then came the banging and Chloe's drunken voice filtering through the door. "Liam, open up." I glanced at the computer screen, walked over, and opened the door. Chloe's makeup was a little smeared, her eyeliner bleeding in a faint tracks under her eyes like shallow tears. She was wearing that off-the-shoulder sweater, her shoulders flushed pink from the cold. Seeing me open the door, she instinctively leaned into me. "It's freezing out there." Julian, that idiot, insisted on hitting an after-party, but I told him I had to go home. She trailed off, because I didn't reach out to catch her like I usually did, nor did I ask how much she'd had to drink, if she was cold, or if she was hungry. I just stepped aside to clear the entryway, turned, and walked back to sit at my computer. "There's food in the kitchen if you want to make something," I said, typing on my keyboard without looking back. "I'm rushing a proposal. You go to sleep first." Khloe stood in the entryway, still leaning at an awkward angle, frozen for several seconds. "Are you?" Her voice was a bit uncertain. "Mad?" "No," I said. "Seriously, I'm rushing a proposal. The new patch is dropping soon, and the lead designer is breathing down my neck." I heard her kick off her heels, followed by her approaching footsteps. The smell of her perfume mixed with stale alcohol wafted over. She walked around to the side of my chair and looked down at my screen. "You're really writing a proposal?" "Yeah." She stood there for a moment without speaking. I could feel her watching me, not looking at the computer, but looking at me. Her gaze rested on the side of my face, carrying a bit of scrutiny and a bit of confusion. "Then I'm really going to bed?" "Go ahead." A few more seconds of silence. Then she turned and walked toward the bedroom, took 2 steps, and stopped again. "Liam, yeah, aren't you? Go to ask if Julian brought me home tonight." My fingers paused on the keyboard for a second, then resumed typing. The words flew across the screen, though I honestly had no idea what I was typing. "Didn't you already say he was being an idiot and insisted on going to an after-party?" I said. "As long as he didn't come to our place, it's fine. I haven't prepped the guest bedroom, anyway." Khloe didn't say anything else. The sound of the bedroom door closing echoed through the apartment, and the living room sank back into silence. I stopped typing, looked at the gibberish I'd mashed onto the screen, and deleted it character by character. At 3 a.m., I saved my document and shut down the computer. As I passed the master bedroom, a warm yellow light spilled from beneath the door crack. Khloe never slept with the lights off. She said she was afraid of the dark. In the past, I would have gone in and laid with her for a while until she fell asleep before slipping out. Tonight, I stood at the door for 2 seconds, then walked straight into the guest bedroom. The sheets in the guest room were a little damp, carrying the stale scent of a room that hadn't been slept in for a long time. I lay down, staring at the ceiling, my phone digging into my thigh through my pocket. I pulled it out and took a look. No new messages. Tonight, Khloe had uncharacteristically sent me her location and uncharacteristically volunteered an explanation about Julian going to an afterparty. In the past, I could have begged for that kind of treatment and still not gotten it. I set the phone on the nightstand and closed my eyes. Detoxing from someone, it seemed, wasn't actually that hard. The weekend sunlight pierced through a gap in the poorly drawn curtains, slicing a blinding white line across the living room floor. I came out of the home office with my coffee, intending to get a refill, and that's when I saw the guy sitting on my couch. Julian Vance had his legs crossed, holding one of the artisan mugs I'd picked up in Portland, slowly sipping his tea. When he saw me, he smiled and nodded, looking more like the owner of this apartment than I did. Khloe walked out of the bedroom wearing a floral sundress I'd never seen before, still carrying the lingering exhaustion of a hangover. She yawned and said in a matter-of-fact tone, "Julian is taking me out to Sequim to do some location scouting. The lavender farms are in full bloom right now. We probably won't make it back tonight, so we booked a bed and breakfast out there." When she said this, she was looking at Julian, not me. I stood there holding my coffee mug, suddenly recalling a joke I'd seen online. When your girlfriend tells you she's going on an overnight trip with her guy best friend, what should you say? The correct answer is, "Have a great time," and then you pack up and move out overnight. I didn't move out. I just smiled. "It gets cold out there," I said. Khloe paused, turning her head to look at me, a trace of surprise in her eyes. She was probably waiting for my usual follow-up. "Make sure you wear enough layers so you don't catch a cold." But I went off script. I set my coffee mug on the table, walked to the entryway, opened the closet, and pulled out the heavy camel coat she'd bought last winter from the second shelf on the left. She had complained it was too expensive back then. I was the one who swiped my card for it. I handed the coat to her, my tone as flat as if I were talking to a roommate. "Take this." Khloe reached out and took it, her lips parting as if she wanted to say something. Julian stood up at that moment, walked over to her side, and smiled. "Don't worry, Liam. I'll take good care of Khloe. The B&B is really nice. I booked the premium suite with a balcony." He deliberately emphasized the words premium suite. I looked at him, realizing the guy really knew how to work his angles. From where I was standing, he was positioned extremely close to Khloe, so close their arms were practically touching. His chin was tilted up slightly, his eyes holding the smugness of a hunter watching prey step into a trap. In the past, I probably would have rushed forward, grabbed him by the collar, and demanded to know what he meant by that. Then Khloe would have stepped between us, accused me of being unreasonable, insisted Julian was just looking out for her, and called me petty and paranoid. We'd had that fight so many times I practically had the script memorized. So this time I just nodded. "Sound great," I said. "The lavender farms look awesome in photos. Make sure you take a lot of them. We can print a few and hang them in the living room." Khloe's expression shifted. She stared at me as if she were trying to recognize a stranger. I walked over, casually adjusted the collar of the coat for her, and raised my hand to tuck a stray, bed-tousled lock of hair behind her ear. Her hair was very soft. It used to be my favorite little routine. "Have a great time," I said, my tone so gentle it felt foreign even to me. "Don't rush back. I've got a deadline for my project coming up, so I might just sleep at the office for the next few days. If you get back and I'm not here, don't wait up." Khloe's shoulders went rigid. Julian's smile froze on his face. He probably hadn't anticipated this pivot. The whole "don't worry, I won't let her drink too much" speech he prepared was stuck in his throat, unable to be swallowed or spat out. Khloe looked down at the coat in her hands, silent for a few seconds. Then she looked up, fixing me with an expression I couldn't read. "Are you not mad? Why would I be?" I countered with a smile. "Didn't you just say Julian is your guy best friend? It makes sense for him to look out for you. I used to be immature and jealous all the time, and that was my bad. I figured it out now." I said it with such sincerity, I almost convinced myself. Khloe opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Julian stood nearby, looking a bit sour. He wanted to interject to reclaim the upper hand, but I didn't give him the chance. "Are you hungry?" I asked Khloe. "Should I make you something to eat? Or are you guys just heading straight out?" "And no, we won't eat here." Khloe's voice sounded a bit dry. "We'll just grab something on the road." "All right." I turned back toward the kitchen, took 2 steps, and looked back. "Oh, by the way, there are 2 fried eggs left in the fridge from yesterday. If you're hungry, you can use them to tide you over. They're not cooked great, but they're edible." With that, I walked into the kitchen, dropped my coffee mug into the sink, and turned on the faucet. Over the rushing water, I heard the rustling sounds of movement in the living room, then the front door opening and closing. The footsteps faded down the hall. I turned off the tap, standing in the kitchen doorway, looking at the empty apartment. There was still an indentation on the couch where Julian had sat, and the mug he'd just used was sitting lopsided on the coffee table, a ring of tea stains at the bottom. The sunlight was still glaringly bright, shining on the decorative art prints Khloe had bought, on the rug we'd picked out together last year, on the bay window bench that no one ever sat on. I stood there for a moment, then walked over, picked up the mug, and dropped it into the trash can. On my way back to the home office, I passed the dining table and saw the plate of fried eggs Khloe had left for me. She'd made them on a whim this morning, burnt on one side, runny on the other, the salt completely uneven. I picked up my chopsticks and put a piece in my mouth. It really was awful, but bite by bite, I finished the entire plate of eggs. Then I washed the dish, put it in the drying rack, went back to my office, opened my computer, and continued working on my game script. A message from Sloane Davis popped up on my screen. "Liam, I redrew that character concept art we talked about. Send it to your email. Let me know if it works." I replied, "Received. I'll take a look this afternoon." Sloane replied instantly, "Working the weekend? Your girlfriend doesn't mind." I stared at that line for a few seconds before typing. She went out of town. Sloane sent an emoji covering its mouth while laughing. Perfect time to slack off then. I didn't reply again. All I knew was that I needed to finish mapping out this narrative framework by the afternoon, order some DoorDash tonight, and sleep until I naturally woke up tomorrow. A weekend where I didn't have to wait for anyone to come home didn't seem so unbearable after all. It was the afternoon of the 3rd day by the time I finally left the office. We were in crunch time for the project, and I'd pulled 2 all-nighters in the studio. My eyelids felt glued together. Pushing open the front door of my apartment, my only goal was to grab a change of clothes and book a cheap hotel next to the studio to crash. The bed here had been feeling awfully, terrifyingly empty lately. The bedroom door was half open. I pushed it the rest of the way and stopped in my tracks. There was a tie resting on the pillow. Navy blue, subtle, jacquard pattern. Not a tie from my closet. It was just lying there, brazenly, on Khloe's side of the bed, bathed in the 3 p.m. sunlight. It was glaringly quiet. I stared at the tie for a few seconds. Oddly enough, the first thought that crossed my mind was, "That's an ugly color." The second thought was, "I'm actually not angry at all." I took out my phone, snapped a picture of the tie, and saved it to an album called Assets. I could use this for the game script later. A scene full of misunderstandings, a tie that sparks a bloody murder. Then, pinching it between 2 fingers like it was contaminated waste, I walked out of the bedroom. The front door opened right at that moment. Khloe stood in the doorway, holding 2 iced lattes. Behind her was Julian. All 3 of us froze. Khloe's eyes darted from my face to the tie dangling from my fingers, and the color drained completely from her face. The carrier bag hit the floor with a smack, and the 2 lattes rolled out, spilling iced coffee everywhere. "Liam, listen to me." She rushed forward, her voice shrill and panicked. "Julian left that here. He went through a bad breakup last night and drank way too much. I just brought him back to crash here. Nothing happened between us." Julian stepped up quickly too, looking at me with absolute earnestness, his eyes filled with just the right amount of guilt. "Liam, please don't misunderstand Khloe. It's my fault. I was in a terrible headspace last night, got totally wasted, and Khloe only took me in because she was scared something would happen to me. Nothing happened, man. If you're going to be mad at anyone, be mad at me." As he said this, he stepped forward slightly, positioning himself defensively in front of Khloe. What a touching scene. The hero protecting the maiden, sacrificing himself. I looked at him, then back at Khloe. Her eyes were already red, her lips pressed tightly together, as if she was waiting for me to fly into a rage, waiting for me to demand, "Why are you with him again? And why did you bring him to our apartment?" And then she'd be able to do what she always did, righteously shoot back with, "Can you stop being so paranoid? And he's my guy best friend." I smiled. I walked forward and gave Julian a nod first. "Bad breakup? That really sucks, man. I get it." Then I turned to Khloe. The familiar, defensive posture she held suddenly stiffened. She clearly hadn't expected that to be my opening line. I raised my hand, and she instinctively flinched back a little. I didn't stop. My fingers gently brushed the side of her ear, smoothing back the hair that had gotten messy in her rush home. The movement was incredibly light, exactly how I'd done it countless times before. She was stunned. I took her hand, placed the tie neatly into her palm, and even folded her fingers over it to hold it tight. "It's okay, I believe you." My voice was soft, like I was coaxing a child who had made a mistake. "Julian is your best friend. Looking out for him is the right thing to do. Next time he goes through a breakup, just bring him straight here. Sleeping on the couch is better than the floor. The floor gets cold." Khloe's head snapped up, her eyes wide. She stared at me intensely, as if trying to excavate a single trace of sarcasm, anger, or hypocrisy from my face. But she found nothing. My expression was pure sincerity, so sincere I almost believed it myself. Her face cycled through several shades before locking onto an expression I'd never seen on her before. Not guilt, not gratitude, but a kind of humiliated fury. She violently yanked her hand away, and the tie was hurled fiercely onto the floor. "If you're pissed off, just say it," she screamed, her voice trembling. "Stop acting all magnanimous and passive-aggressive. Is this fun for you, Liam? If you want to fight, let's fight. If you want to scream, scream. But don't you dare talk to me in that tone." Julian looked stunned too. He clearly hadn't expected the plot to veer in this direction. I gave an innocent shrug, unable to stop the corners of my mouth from twitching upward. I genuinely couldn't hold back the amusement. Am I acting? I looked at Khloe, my tone remaining perfectly calm. "I'm not. If I were genuinely pissed off, that tie would be in the dumpster downstairs right now, not in your hand. Khloe, you're overthinking it." With that, I stopped looking at her. I walked past her, back into the bedroom, and grabbed the laptop bag I'd already packed. When I came out, Khloe was still rooted to the spot, her chest heaving violently. Julian was crouched on the floor, silently cleaning up the spilled lattes. He looked up at me, his eyes full of complex emotions. I walked to the door, paused, and didn't look back. "You guys catch up. I'm heading to the studio. The project is heavy right now, so I'll be staying at a hotel. I won't be back for a few days." The door clicked shut behind me. The hallway was quiet. I hit the elevator button and watched the numbers tick up floor by floor. When the doors opened, I heard a dull thud behind me, like something being hurled against the inside of my front door. I didn't turn around. I just stepped in. As the elevator went down, my phone buzzed. Khloe had sent a text, a very long one. I didn't tap it open. I just swiped it away. When I reached the ground floor, I walked out. The sun felt amazing, so bright it made my eyes ache. I stood at the entrance to the building, took a deep breath, and suddenly wanted to laugh. That tie belonged to Julian. He had a bad breakup last night, and Khloe had brought him back to our apartment to sleep over. And I genuinely wasn't sad at all. I hailed an Uber outside the complex and gave the driver the name of a hotel. The driver eyed me in the rearview mirror, didn't say a word, and hit the gas. This was day 15 of detoxing from Khloe. I had unpinned her text thread and turned off her custom notification tone. I no longer stared at my phone, waiting to see if she replied, nor did I analyze the hidden meaning behind every caption on her Instagram stories. To be honest, it was pretty liberating. The hours I used to spend waiting for her to come home were now fully dedicated to writing game scripts. 2 days ago, during a meeting, the lead designer patted my shoulder and said, "Liam, you're killing it lately. You're in the zone, man. The new storyline is super immersive." I didn't tell him that when a man stops being a simp, his IQ finally reclaims the high ground. Khloe, on the other hand, had started to change. At first, she just texted more often. From going entire days without replying in the past, she was now asking, "What's for dinner? What time are you off? It's raining outside. Do you have an umbrella?" My replies were polite and concise. "Working late. I'm good. Got one." Then it escalated to phone calls. One night at 11 p.m., I was at the office reviewing character concept art with Sloan, and my phone rang. It was Khloe. The background noise was quiet. She didn't sound like she was at a bar. "Where are you?" she asked. "Office. With who?" "A co-worker." Silence hung on the line for 2 seconds. Male co-worker or female co-worker? I glanced at Sloan, who was looking down and sketching. Did you need something? I asked. Khloe hung up on the spot. I didn't overthink it and went back to discussing outfit details for the new character with Sloane. Sloane was interesting. She was a straight shooter who never made you guess what she was thinking. She told me the character I designed was terrible, too perfect, that players wouldn't like him and he needed flaws. I asked what kind of flaws. She said, like chain smoking, day drinking, or getting a stupid face tattoo. I told her to get lost. In that easy, banter-filled atmosphere, time flew. Before I knew it, it was 1 a.m. Sloane's stomach growled loudly. Without missing a beat or acting embarrassed, she announced she was starving and going downstairs for food. I said sure, I'd go too. My brain was turning to mush anyway. There was a 24-hour convenience store downstairs, the fluorescent lights blindingly white. We each grabbed a steaming cup of instant ramen and sat on the high stools by the window. As she ate, Sloane complained about a plot hole in my script, arguing it made no sense for the male lead to treat the female lead so unconditionally well. I asked why it didn't make sense. She said, because nobody in the real world is that stupid. Nobody gives without expecting something in return, unless they have an ulterior motive. I just smiled and didn't argue. The night outside was pitch black, and the heater in the store was blasting. I suddenly felt like these kinds of days, no second-guessing, no walking on eggshells, were absolutely incredible. And then Khloe appeared. She was carrying a thermos, standing outside the convenience store doors, watching me through the glass. The bright store lights illuminated her carefully made-up face, making her look a bit pale. Sloane looked up at her, then glanced at me, and instantly put the pieces together. She casually finished her last fish cake, picked up her sketches, and stood up. Liam, your friend? I'm gonna head back up. I'll email you the details. Being ignored instantly ignited Khloe's fury. Stop right there. Did I say you could leave? Sloane's footsteps halted. I reached out to block Sloane before she could lose her temper, standing up and putting myself between them. I looked at Khloe, my voice so calm it felt foreign to me. Khloe, this is my co-worker, Sloane. Thanks for bringing the soup, but you should head home. I'm still working. Co-worker. Khloe's voice spiked. Eating at a convenience store with a female co-worker in the middle of the night? You got some nerve, Liam. I actually laughed. It was genuinely funny. 15 days ago, she spent the night at a cabin with Julian, and all I said was be safe. Now I was eating instant ramen with a co-worker, and suddenly that crossed the line. Sloane, I said to the girl still standing there, go on up. I'll think about that scene in the script, and we'll hash it out in the meeting tomorrow. Sloane nodded. This time, she didn't even look at Khloe. She pushed the door open and left. Khloe tried to chase after her, but I grabbed her wrist. I didn't hold it tightly, but she struggled and couldn't break free. Let go. She glared at me. I let go, taking a half step back to maintain a polite distance. I appreciate the soup. Thank you for making the trip. It's cold out, get some rest. I grabbed the thermos off the counter and turned toward the register to pay for my stuff and leave. Liam, Khloe called out from behind me, a tremor in her voice. I turned around and saw that her eyes were red. I'd looked at that face for 3 years. I'd seen her cry, laugh, and throw tantrums, and every time it had broken my heart. But right now, the only thing I felt was a faint sense of exhaustion. What is this? She demanded. Just because I went location scouting with Julian, you're treating me like this? I leaned against the checkout counter, thought about it for a second, and decided to just lay it all out. Khloe, I'm going to ask you a few questions. Just answer them honestly. I looked right at her. First, that day you said you were going to Sequim for location scouting. It was just you and Julian. Alone, right? She opened her mouth, but couldn't deny it. Second, you stayed at A, B, and B. How many rooms did you book? 2. Obviously 2. She immediately shot back loudly. What are you implying, Liam? Are you accusing me of something? I ignored her outburst and kept going. Third, if it was me who went on an overnight trip with a female friend to a cabin, and we booked 2 rooms, what would your reaction be when I got back? She froze. You'd lose your mind. I answered for her. You'd go through my phone. You'd make me delete her number. You'd make me beg for forgiveness and swear never to do it again. And if I resisted, you'd say I didn't love you anymore. And then you'd give me the silent treatment for at least 3 days. The refrigerators in the convenience store hummed loudly. The orange overhead lights washed over her face, stripping away the faux outrage she was clinging to until there was nowhere to hide. But what actually happened? I looked at her. You went with Julian, and I didn't say a word. You came back, and I made you breakfast. You brought him home to crash, and I believed you. You said you stayed in separate rooms at the B&B, and I believe that too. Khloe, I became the chill boyfriend you always said you wanted. Why are you upset about it? Her lips parted, but she was speechless. I walked over to her and pressed the thermos back in her hands. Her fingers were ice cold, and she flinched slightly when I touched her. I'm going to skip the soup. I'm watching my carbs lately, I said. Head home soon. Be careful on the road. With that, I turned and headed for the door. Liam, she called out again. I didn't turn around. Are you seeing someone else? I stopped in my tracks and finally let out a laugh. I turned back to look at her. This woman I used to hold so carefully, terrified she might break, now standing under the harsh convenience store lights with red rims around her eyes, looking like a kid whose favorite toy had just been snatched away. Khloe. I walked back over to her, standing close enough to smell the perfume on her, the same bottle I'd bought her with my annual bonus. Listen to me, clearly. For the past 3 years, my phone passcode has been your birthday. You manage my paychecks. I tell you everywhere I go. My only female friends are co-workers and clients. Am I seeing someone else? You tell me. Her eyes darted away. But you, on the other hand. I stepped back, my tone as mundane as if I were discussing the weather. All those chat logs with Julian on your phone? Every time you deleted them. I'd already read them after you fell asleep. You called me petty, controlling, said I didn't understand you, and I took it all. But Khloe, put your hand on your heart and tell me, for the past 3 years, who was really controlling who? The color drained from her face completely. I didn't say another word. I pushed open the door and walked out. The cold wind hit me, clearing my head immediately. I made it about 50 feet when I heard hurried footsteps behind me. Khloe caught up and grabbed my sleeve. Liam, I'm sorry. I looked at her. She was biting her lip, tears swimming in her eyes. I admit it, I was toxic. I liked how well you treated me, but I didn't want to be tied down. But I swear, nothing ever happened between me and Julian. You have to believe me. I believe you. I cut her off. She froze. I gently pulled my sleeve from her grip and reached out to pull the lapels of her wool coat tighter around her against the cold. It's freezing out here. Go home. I believe everything you're saying, really. I believed it then, and I believe it now. Nothing happened between you and Julian. You have a purely platonic friendship, and you just needed your space. I understand all of it. Then why are you? Because I'm tired. I looked at her. Khloe, I'm not throwing a tantrum. I'm not trying to force you to change. I've genuinely just accepted it. I used to be narrow-minded. I always wanted to keep you tethered to me. Now, I'm letting you go. You can go wherever you want, hang out with whoever you want. Isn't that what you wanted? Her tears finally spilled over. I raised my hand, adjusting a stray lock of hair the wind had blown across her face for the last time. Don't cry. You'll ruin your makeup. Head back. Isn't Julian waiting for you? I just saw his Instagram story. He's parked downstairs at your building. Her head snapped up. How did you know? I just smiled, didn't answer, and turned to walk into the night. No footsteps followed me. I knew she was standing right where I'd left her, watching my back. Just like how, countless times before, I had stood outside the doors of some club, watching her back as she walked in with Julian's arm slung over her shoulder. Julian's photography exhibition was held in a trendy Arts District warehouse, the entrance lined with congratulatory floral arrangements. As Khloe walked in with her arm hooked through mine, I spotted a few familiar local influencers posing for photos by the door. She was wearing a new dress today. She tried on 3 different outfits before leaving the house, finally settling on this emerald green one. I knew exactly what she was trying to do. She wanted to make me jealous. She wanted to see me get tense. She wanted to prove I still cared. Unfortunately, she didn't need to prove anything anymore. The lighting in the gallery was moody and dim, the walls staggered with photos of various sizes. I strolled through with my hands behind my back, taking in the exhibit piece by piece. I quickly caught the theme. It was entirely Khloe. Khloe staring thoughtfully out a coffee shop window. Khloe looking back over her shoulder in a rainy alleyway. Khloe running barefoot on a beach. Khloe's silhouette outlined in gold by the sunset. Every shot was incredibly atmospheric. Every gaze captured on film had a spark in it. What do you think of the shots? Julian appeared beside me out of nowhere, holding 2 glasses of champagne. He handed one to me with a suave, polished smile. Khloe is my ultimate muse. No one understands her emotional range like I do. I took the champagne, but didn't drink it, just swirling the liquid in the glass. Khloe stood next to me, her eyes darting between Julian and me, filled with a mix of nervous anxiety and anticipation. She was probably waiting for me to storm off like I used to, or spit out some passive-aggressive, bitter remark. You don't mind, do you, Liam? Julian added, smiling like he was entirely harmless. In my eyes, Khloe is the perfect work of art. And art requires an eye that appreciates beauty. Mind what? I turned to look at him, my expression radiating total sincerity. Julian blinked, clearly thrown off by my reaction. I pointed at the largest print on the wall, a black and white shot of Khloe lying sideways on a sofa, the light and shadow dramatically sectioned off. I patted Julian on the shoulder, pitching my voice just loud enough for the small crowd around us to hear. The shots are phenomenal, man. You made my girlfriend look like a supermodel. With skills like these, it'd be a waste if you didn't open a premium wedding photography studio. Seriously, Julian, when you launch your wedding business, Khloe and I are definitely booking you for our engagement shoot. You gotta give me the homie discount, though. Julian's smile died on his face. Khloe whipped her head around to stare at me, her eyes wide as saucers. I flashed her a grin and shoved the champagne flute back into Julian's hand. This is too cold. Khloe shouldn't drink it. You guys catch up. I'm gonna look around some more. With that, I put my hands back in my pockets and leisurely strolled deeper into the gallery. Behind me, I heard Khloe's voice, laced with urgency. Liam, wait for me. I heard Julian call out to her in a low voice. Khloe, I've got a few new prints in the back. Do you want to see them first? Her footsteps paused, but she ultimately chased after me. She stayed by my side, opening her mouth a few times to speak before swallowing the words back down. Finally, she forced out a question. Did you just mention wedding photos? Yeah, why? I looked at her. It's going to happen sooner or later, and we'll need to shoot them eventually. He's genuinely got the skills. Keep the business in the family, right? You. Khloe bit her lip. Her expression was a tangled mess. I couldn't tell if she was thrilled or devastated. Just then, a burst of laughter came from ahead. A small group of younger people was clustered around a photo. I walked closer. It was a side-profile shot of Khloe in a white button-down, drinking coffee by a window. The lighting really was beautiful, but the small placard placed next to it had a caption. To the girl I understand the most. Oh wow, I chuckled. Mr. Vance is quite the romantic. Khloe's face paled, and, just as she was about to explain, Julian caught up with us. He stood on Khloe's other side, maintaining a meticulously calculated, polite distance. Liam, don't misunderstand, he said, practically oozing earnestness. It's just an occupational habit for photographers to assign a specific emotion or narrative to a piece. My admiration for Khloe is purely artistic. I know, I nodded enthusiastically. If you didn't admire her, you wouldn't have been able to shoot so many incredible photos. Honestly, Julian, with this level of dedication, you're going to do big things in the industry. Julian's smile flickered and died again. I realized this guy was actually pretty entertaining to watch. Every time I volleyed his rehearsed lines back over the net in a way he didn't expect, he got that look on his face, like he'd thrown a haymaker into a pile of cotton. It visibly suffocated him. Khloe suddenly spoke up from the sidelines. Julian, there are a lot of guests today. Go entertain the VIPs. I'll walk Liam through the rest of the exhibit. A dark shadow flashed through Julian's eyes, but he quickly suppressed it and nodded. All right, take your time looking around. Liam, if you have any questions about the pieces, just holler. He turned and walked away, the very picture of a dignified gentleman. Khloe tugged at my sleeve, dropping her voice. What is going on with you today? You're acting so weird. Am I? I looked down at her. Haven't I always been like this? You used to... She paused. You used to get so upset when you saw Julian taking pictures of me. Oh, well, that was just me not understanding art, I said deadpan. Walking through this exhibit today really opened my eyes. Julian genuinely sees you as a subject. No way to muse. I was being stupid, getting jealous. The guy is just creating art. Khloe stared at me for several seconds. Her eyes were searching, filled with scrutiny and a trace of something I couldn't quite identify. Liam, she suddenly asked, are you falling out of love with me? I stopped walking, turned to face her, and reached out to smooth a stray hair by her ear. My touch was soft. How could I be? If I didn't love you, I wouldn't have shown up today. Khloe opened her mouth, wanting to say something else, but was interrupted by Julian shouting from across the room. Khloe, come over here for a group photo. I have some people who want to meet you. She glanced at me. I jerked my chin toward the crowd. Go on, supermodel. I'm going to keep looking around. Khloe hesitated, but ultimately walked away. I leaned against the wall, watching as she was pulled into the crowd by Julian, the camera flashes erupting one after another. Julian's hand rested naturally on her shoulder. He wore a flawless smile, but his eyes kept darting in my direction. I raised my empty glass toward him, making eye contact, and mouthed two words, good luck. The smile on his face visibly twitched. Julian invited me to meet up, and I didn't decline. It wasn't because I wanted to hear whatever bullshit he was spewing, but simply because the guy had been getting a little too cocky lately. It was time to give him a chance to vomit up all the ugly thoughts he was keeping inside. The speakeasy was mostly empty. He picked a corner booth. He was already drinking by the time I arrived, a half-empty glass of whiskey in front of him. When he saw me walk up, he raised a hand to signal the waiter. What are you drinking? My treat. Ice water with lemon. Thanks. He laughed, the sound heavy with implication. What? Scared you'll say the wrong thing if you get drunk. I laughed too. Scared? What do I have to be scared of with you? I have to be up early tomorrow. I'm just not a big drinker. Julian leaned back into the leather booth, slowly tracing the rim of his glass with his finger. The low lighting carved his face into sharp shadows. He didn't rush to speak, and I didn't push him. I just drank my water and looked out the window. The silence dragged on for about 30 seconds. Liam, he finally started, his tone laced with a faux philosophical sigh I couldn't quite decode. You know, I actually really respect you. Respect me for what? I respect your tolerance. He slammed his glass down onto the table. The heavy crystal thudded against the wood. There's been a revolving door of guys in Khloe's life, but you're the one who's held on the longest. I didn't take the bait. I let him keep talking. Her ex, that finance bro, it took exactly 3 photos over the course of 2 weeks, and they were done. Julian began ticking them off on his fingers, like a general recounting his conquests. The guy after him, the designer? Even easier. I just had Khloe crash at my place for 2 nights without going home, and the dude imploded on his own. But you? Man, I practically moved into your apartment, and you were handing me coffee. He had a smirk on his face as he said this, like he was bragging about some monumental achievement. So you asked me out tonight, I put down my water glass to give me an award? King of the Simps, I brought you here to tell you something. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Khloe can't leave me, and it's not because I'm her guy best friend. It's because I make sure she can't leave me. You get it? I looked at him, saying nothing. My lack of reaction rattled him a bit. He leaned back and scoffed. You don't believe me, do you? I believe you, I said. You're being very earnest. He blinked. He clearly hadn't expected me to be so cooperative. Those photos. I asked, what did you take pictures of? What? You just said. I pointed at him. You sent photos to the finance bureau. The smugness crept back onto Julian's face. He pulled out his phone, swiped a few times, and slid it across the table. On the screen was a profile shot of a man and a woman. The guy was blurry. The woman was crystal clear. It was Khloe. In the picture, she was leaning against a man's shoulder. The angle was intensely intimate, but if you looked closely, you could see her eyes were closed like she was asleep. The man's hand wasn't actually touching her, but the framing made it look like they were embracing. Just this. He took the phone back. It was enough. That guy saw it, lost his mind, and didn't even bother asking her for an explanation. I nodded, acknowledging his impressive manipulation tactics. He took another sip of whiskey, the floodgates completely open now. Liam, I'm going to lay it out for you. I know exactly how Khloe works. She needs someone to put her on a pedestal, someone to chase her. The less you care, the harder she clings to you. All those other guys, including you, played it wrong. The tighter you try to leash her, the faster she runs. Look at me. I'm always at her beck and call, but I never officially cross the line. And because of that, she can't live without me. So you call me here tonight, I said, to give me a masterclass. I'm calling you here to tell you to be smart and back off. He stared at me, a flash of genuine malice finally breaking through his facade. Khloe is hyper-focused on you right now, but that's only because you suddenly pulled back and she's not used to it. Once she gets used to you not being around, what the hell are you to her? I finished the rest of my lemon water and set the glass down. Class over? He raised an eyebrow. If class is over, I'm heading out. I stood up. Liam. He called out to my back. I turned around. He stood up too, stepping closer, his voice dropping into a harsh whisper. The first time she got drunk at a club, I took her there. She thought she was just letting loose, but I'm the one who steered her to that spot. Half of her wild phases were orchestrated by me. I just wanted to see how long a nice guy like you could take the abuse. I looked at him. He looked back, waiting for my reaction. I laughed. Julian, I said, you're a really entertaining guy. His expression faltered for a second. To play a game of chess this massive, all for one woman. I patted him on the shoulder. It's a shame. It was a great strategy, but your opponent didn't play the moves you wanted. I turned to leave, took 2 steps, and stopped to look back at him. Oh, by the way, could you repeat that last part? What? The line. I pointed at him. The first time she went to a club, I took her there. The color drained from his face. Are you recording me? I pulled my phone out of my pocket and waved it at him. The screen was lit up, showing the voice memo app. The timer was still ticking. The lighting is pretty bad over by the booth. You probably didn't notice. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. But that's okay. You've noticed it now. Liam. He took a sudden step toward me. Don't do anything stupid. I took a step back, maintaining a safe distance. I was just recording for fun. You know, to review my failures in life later. Don't worry. Your brilliant masterstrokes are a secret between you and me. For now, he stood rooted to the spot, his fists clenching and unclenching. I pushed the heavy doors of the speakeasy open. The cold air rushed in, and I felt completely awake. The phone in my pocket felt warm. I pulled it out, looked at the audio file, hit save, and renamed it with 2 words, true friend. Before leaving the apartment, Khloe stood frozen in the entryway for a solid 30 seconds. She was wearing a brand new black evening gown, her makeup far more elaborate than usual. She smelled like the perfume I bought her last year. She looked over at me, sitting on the couch, flipping through a game concept art book. Her lips moved, like she was trying to force words out. You'd better go. Don't keep Julian waiting. I turned a page, not bothering to look up. Have fun. She stood there for 2 more seconds, then slammed the door on her way out. I hadn't absorbed a single word on the page. I closed the book and looked out the window. The city skyline was gorgeous tonight. The lights from the restaurants along the waterfront merged into a glowing ribbon against the dark river. The restaurant Julian booked was right on the waterfront. I got up, threw on a jacket, grabbed my phone, and headed out. The restaurant was on the 36th floor, featuring floor-to-ceiling windows with a panoramic view of the water. When I arrived, Khloe and Julian were already seated. I found a table in a dark corner behind them, my back to them, but close enough to hear every word. A waiter came by, and I ordered a glass of juice. Is Liam really not coming? It was Julian's voice, dripping with that trademark, sickeningly fake concern. Is he still mad at me? Should I try calling him again? Don't bother. Khloe's tone was clipped. He said he's working late. Working late? It's your birthday today. Julian sighed heavily. Khloe, I don't know if I should say this, but Liam, he really hasn't seemed to care much about you lately. There was a few seconds of silence from their table. His studio is in crunch mode right now. Khloe defended me. Right, take his side. Julian let out a soft chuckle. Come on, let's order first. I brought a present for you. You can open it in a bit. I took a sip of my juice and kept staring at my menu. The couple at the table next to me was taking selfies, the flash going off periodically. The courses arrived one by one. Their conversation was mostly trivial. Julian talked about his gallery show, the models he was currently shooting, the gossip about who in their social circle was breaking up. Khloe would give non-committal responses, but mostly I just heard the clinking of silverware against porcelain. Khloe, Julian's voice suddenly dropped an octave. Actually, I didn't ask you out tonight, just for dinner. The clinking of silverware stopped. I turned my head slightly. In my peripheral vision, I saw Julian pull a velvet box from his pocket and pop it open. Inside was a necklace. The diamond pendant caught the ambient light, glittering sharply. What does this mean? Khloe's voice went tight. I love you, Julian said, pouring on the romance. Not as a friend, as a man. I've been in love with you since the day we met. All these years, I stayed by your side playing the best friend. I watched you cycle through boyfriend after boyfriend. Watched you settle for Liam. Do you have any idea how much that tore me up inside? Khloe didn't say a word. Liam isn't good enough for you. Julian pushed forward. He's just a simp. Other than blindly doing whatever you say, what does he have? Does he understand you? Does he get the stress you deal with at work? Does he know what you actually want out of life? I'm different, Khloe. I'm the only one who truly understands you. I raised my glass of juice to take a sip, only to realize it was empty. You're drunk. Khloe finally spoke, her voice turning ice cold. Julian, stop. I'm not drunk. Julian's tone grew urgent. Do you realize how much I've done for you? When you fought with your ex, who sat with you on the pier until the sun came up? When your boss tore into you, who took you out to dinner and talked you through it? Where was Liam? What does he do besides tell you not to go to clubs and tell you to stop hanging out with me? He was looking out for me. Looking out for you? Julian laughed, a harsh, grating sound. He doesn't trust you. He doesn't trust me. Every time you guys fought over me, I saw it all. You know how I felt? I was laughing my ass off on the inside. Khloe's voice shifted drastically. What did you just say? Julian realized his slip-up. He paused, quickly pivoting back to his soulful persona. I mean, I felt sick for you. Watching him treat you like that, it broke my heart. Khloe, just give me a chance. I swear to God I'll treat you 100 times better than he ever did. Silence. A very long, heavy silence. Then Khloe spoke. Take the necklace back. We're splitting the check for tonight. Don't ever contact me again. The sound of a chair scraping against the floor. Khloe. Julian's voice dropped, turning dark. What the hell is this? You're cutting me off of that simp. He's not a simp. Khloe's voice was shaking. He's my boyfriend. Boyfriend. Julian sneered. You think he's your boyfriend? You go out drinking till 3 a.m. and leave him sitting at home waiting for you. The second you have a fight with him, you come running to me, crying. Is that how you treat a boyfriend? You're just using him because you're used to having a safety net to catch you. Khloe said nothing. Wake the hell up, Julian pressed. What you feel for Liam isn't love, it's dependency. We're the same kind of people, you and I. We both need to be worshipped, and we both can't handle being ignored. Look at yourself right now. The second he goes cold on you, you completely panic. You're practically begging for his attention at his office. Don't you think that's pathetic? Shut up. No, I won't. Julian's voice rose in volume. Do you seriously think Liam gives a shit about you anymore? He's making eyes at that co-worker of his. You think I'm blind? You're the only idiot still trying to force it. Khloe, let me tell you right now. If you walk out that door tonight, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. Let go of me. No. I stood up, holding my empty juice glass, navigated around the booth, and walked right up to their table. Julian was gripping Khloe's wrist. Khloe's face was flushed a furious red, tears brimming in her eyes. A few nearby tables were already staring. "Excuse me," I said. Julian snapped his head up. When he saw it was me, the expression on his face was a masterpiece. Khloe froze, and her tears finally spilled over. I shook my empty glass at her. "I was just going to order another juice, but it sounded like you guys were having a really intense conversation, so I figured I'd come listen." Julian, that confession just now was deeply moving. But I looked at Julian and smiled. "The story you told me at the speakeasy the other day? Way better plot. Want to tell it again, with Khloe as the audience?" Julian's face went completely ashen. The romantic, dim lighting of the restaurant suddenly felt glaringly harsh. He stared at me, his lips moving, but no sound came out. Khloe stood beside him, still trapped by his grip on her wrist, her gaze darting frantically between him and me. "Liam, what are you talking about?" Her voice was tight with panic. "What story?" I didn't answer right away. I pulled out the chair opposite her and sat down, placing my empty glass on the table. Julian's Adam's apple bobbed violently before he finally forced out, "Liam, don't you dare start spewing bullshit." I raised a hand, cutting him off, pulled out my phone, and tapped play on the audio file. Khloe stood there as if she had been nailed to the floor. The recording played clearly. She came to me crying, saying all men are garbage. While I was comforting her, in my head I was thinking, another idiot bites the dust. She had no idea that the person she really needed to watch out for was me. Julian finally snapped out of his shock and lunged across the table to grab my phone. "That's fake. You set me up, you son of a bitch." I kicked off the ground, sliding my chair back a couple of feet. He grasped at empty air and lost his balance, crashing hard into the edge of the table. Plates, silverware, and wine glasses shattered onto the floor in a catastrophic mess. The restaurant manager came sprinting over. I waved him off. "Personal dispute. Give us 5 minutes. Put the damages on my tab." The manager looked at me, then at Julian's furiously pale face, and wisely backed away. Khloe had finally snapped back to reality. She stared at Julian, her voice trembling violently. "It was you. When Connor and I broke up, you told me he was paranoid and overly controlling. You said all men were like that. You set that up." Julian gripped the edge of the table to steady himself, his face a sickly mix of green and white. "Khloe, listen to me. I was immature. I was so young back then." "You were young." Khloe interrupted him, her voice cracking into a scream. "You were 25. I deleted him from my phone because of you. We fought for 2 months, and it ended with him leaving me stranded on the side of the highway. And you convinced me it was just him being insecure." Julian opened his mouth, but couldn't formulate a word. Khloe's tears poured down. She took a step back, then another, looking at this man she had known for 5 years like he was a monster. I sat off to the side, casually picking up my empty glass. "Is there more?" She suddenly turned to me, her eyes bloodshot and terrifying. "Well, don't I know?" I glanced at Julian. His lips were white. He was staring at me with a mix of raw hatred and desperate pleading. "There's more," I said, putting the glass down. "Remember that tattoo artist you had a fight with at the club? The one you told me was harassing you, and Julian stepped in and almost got into a brawl with him? Do you remember why that guy suddenly apologized and never showed his face around you again?" "Because he received a batch of photos," I said. "Intimate photos of his girlfriend hooking up with someone else. I don't know who took them, or how. But the phone number used to send those photos was Julian's studio burner phone." Julian flinched violently, staring at me in sheer disbelief. "How the hell did I find that out?" I ignored him and kept going. "And the intern at the magazine you worked at, the one you really liked and took out all the time?" Then she suddenly quit and moved back home. She said someone took inappropriate photos of her and mailed them anonymously to her parents. She was too humiliated to stay. "Shut your mouth." Julian finally exploded. He grabbed a steak knife off the table, but a waiter who had been eyeing him closely immediately tackled him from behind, pinning his arm down. He struggled, screaming at me. "You investigated me, you psycho." I stood up and walked over to Khloe. Her face was drenched in tears, her makeup completely ruined. Her eyeliner had bled down her cheeks, leaving her looking utterly devastated, a far cry from the polished fashion editor she usually was. She looked up at me, her lips trembling as she tried to form words. I reached out, brushing away a strand of hair that had stuck to the tear tracks on her cheek, tucking it behind her ear. My touch was just as gentle as it used to be. "You met him 5 years ago," I said softly. "You were 24, fresh off your breakup with Connor. You treated him like a confidant, gave him your whole heart, told him everything. Then you met me. He told you I wasn't good enough for you, told you to test me. Every fight we ever had, every time his presence caused a rift between us, he stood by your side. He defended you, gave you advice, played the hero." Khloe couldn't even speak through her sobbing. She just shook her head frantically. From the very beginning, I looked directly into her eyes, enunciating every word. He never intended to let you have a functional relationship. Julian was pinned to the table, his cheek pressed against shards of broken glass. He looked as pathetic as a beaten dog. He was still thrashing and cursing, but no one was listening to him anymore. Khloe finally broke down wailing, as if she were letting out years of manipulated grief all at once. She reached out, trying to grab my sleeve. I took a step back, keeping myself just out of reach. Liam, she choked out. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I was so wrong. I didn't know. I had no idea. I know, I said. She looked up at me through tear-blurred eyes. The things you didn't know, I knew. I put my phone back into my pocket. But I never told you, because if I did, you wouldn't have believed me. You would have thought I was being petty. You would have said I was targeting him, that I was possessive and controlling, that I was exactly like the awful exes he always warned you about. Khloe shook her head violently, tears flying from her face. That night at the convenience store, you demanded to know why I was eating with a female coworker, I said. I told you that 15 days prior, you spent the night at a cabin with him, and I didn't say a word. What I didn't tell you that night was this. While you were at that cabin, he posted an Instagram story. Close friends only. It was a picture of you sleeping in the bed. Someone screenshot it and sent it to me. All the blood left Khloe's face. He didn't touch you. He just took the picture, I said. He took it to prove he won. To prove that Khloe Montgomery always ends up by his side, and to prove that no matter how hard the simp tried, he'd never actually get the girl. The restaurant was dead silent, save for Khloe's sobbing and the heavy breathing of the waiter keeping Julian pinned. I picked up the bill the manager had left on the adjacent table, pulled a few large bills from my wallet, and dropped them on the table. Liam, Khloe screamed, her voice tearing at the seams. I turned around, and she threw herself at me, gripping my arm with a death grip, her nails digging into my skin. Don't leave. Please don't leave. I know I messed up. I'll listen to whatever you say from now on. I'll do whatever you want me to do. I looked down at her. I'd looked at this face for 3 years. I'd lost sleep for her, stood in the freezing rain for her, gotten into fights for her, written dozens of pages of apologies for her. I had indulged every whim, backed down in every argument, and tolerated every Julian Vance I couldn't stand. Khloe, I said, you're not wrong. She froze. I'm the one who's wrong. I reached down and firmly pried her fingers off my arm. I made you used to this. I made you used to my endless patience. I made you used to the fact that I'd always turn around and come back. I made you believe that no matter how horribly you treated me, Liam would always be there. I took a step back. I'm not there anymore. Khloe stood frozen. The tears on her face hadn't dried, but her eyes looked empty, like a piece of her had just hollowed out. I turned and headed for the door. As I passed Julian, I paused for a second. He was still pressed against the table, his cheek resting on the broken glass. He turned his head to look at me, his eyes a toxic brew of hatred and defeat. Those photos, I said, the ones my contact sent me, they've already been packaged and forwarded to the cybercrimes division. Hacking, stalking, non-consensual photography, and distribution. You're going to be busy for a while. Julian's face completely collapsed. I walked out of the restaurant. The rain had stopped at some point. The streets were busy. People were carrying takeout. Couples were holding hands, and a few people stumbled out of bars nearby. I lit a cigarette, took a drag, and slowly exhaled. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Sloan. How the audio file play out. I typed back one word. Perfect. As I stepped out from the overhang, it started to rain again. It was a heavy downpour, the drops smashing loudly against the awning. Khloe was following me, her footsteps stumbling and erratic. Her makeup was entirely washed out by tears, the eyeliner smeared into thick black streaks down her cheeks. Liam, Khloe called out from behind me, her voice hoarse. I didn't turn around. I just held out a hand to check how hard it was raining. It was coming down fast. My car was parked in an open lot a couple of blocks away. I was going to be soaked by the time I made it there. The frantic click-clack of heels on the wet pavement hurried toward me. Khloe ran up and grabbed my wrist. Her hands were freezing and shaking uncontrollably. Liam, we need to talk. I turned to face her. She stood right under the light of the overhang, looking as pathetic as a drowned rat. The Khloe who had once dominated the club scene, who had barked orders at me and demanded the world, was now standing in front of me with bloodless lips, her shoulders trembling. Talk about what? I asked. Us. She gripped my wrist tighter, her nails digging into my skin. I know I was wrong. I know how stupid I've been all these years. Julian, he manipulated me. I was completely blind to it. But Liam, what I feel for you is real. Couldn't you feel that? I could feel it. That was exactly why I'd managed to hold on for so long. I felt it, I said. A spark of hope lit up in Khloe's eyes, and her grip on my wrist loosened slightly. But so what? Her expression froze. I gently pulled my wrist away. I did it slowly. I didn't shove her away. I just withdrew my arm and slipped my hand into my pocket. Khloe, your feelings for me are real, and your feelings for Julian are real too. You treat friendship as gospel. You treat dependency as love. You treat habit as devotion. You take everyone seriously. But do you know what you take the most seriously? She stared at me blankly. Yourself. I said. You only care about how you feel. When I went to the club to find you, you felt annoyed. When I stopped checking on you, you felt panicked. When Julian was around, you felt secure. When he confessed to you, you felt disgusted. From start to finish, the only thing that has ever mattered to you is whether you were comfortable and whether you were happy. That's not true. She tried to argue, but the words caught in her throat. She couldn't say them. It's okay, I smiled. It's really okay. Human beings are inherently selfish. I am too. So the choice I'm making right now is to make sure I'm comfortable. The rain was deafening. The light from the overhang blurred in the mist, casting a halo around us. Khloe bit her lip, and the tears started falling again. She cried quietly this time, without making a sound, but the tears simply wouldn't stop. You said you wanted to start over. I looked into her eyes. How do we do that? Do we just zero out the number of times you lied to me to hang out with Julian? Do we magically erase the moment you threw that tie in my face and screamed, "If you're pissed off, just say it? I can change." Her voice was barely a whisper, mostly swallowed by the sound of the rain. I know you can. I meant that. After tonight, she absolutely would change. She'd cut off Julian, stop going to clubs, and learn how to actually consider someone else's feelings. Tonight's shock was massive enough to completely rebuild her, but I don't want to wait around for it anymore. Khloe's head jerked up. You can work on yourself. But I've already waited 3 years. I'm done. I pulled out a cigarette, placed it between my lips, and struck my lighter 3 times before it finally caught. Do you know what the biggest thing I have to thank Julian for is? She shook her head. It wasn't his little performance tonight. I took a drag, the smoke instantly dissipating in the heavy rain. It was what he told me at the speakeasy. He bragged about how he manipulated your ex-boyfriends, how he systematically pushed away any guy who was a threat to him. Hearing that, I suddenly felt at peace. At peace. Yeah, I flicked the ash, because I realized I hadn't been competing with Julian all these years. I'd been competing against your trust. You trusted him, and you didn't trust me. So no matter what I did, I could never win. And since the game was rigged from the start, I'm just not playing anymore. Khloe's tears fell harder. She opened her mouth to speak, but the only thing that made it out were 3 words. I'm so sorry. You don't need to be. I crushed the cigarette and tossed it into the nearby trash can. You're not wrong. I'm not wrong. And honestly, Julian's not wrong either. We're all just living the way we want to live. It just turns out we don't want the same things. An Uber cut through the sheet of rain, its turn signal blinking as it pulled up to the curb right in front of us. The back door opened, and Sloane stepped out, holding an umbrella. She was carrying a second, brand-new clear plastic umbrella in her other hand. She tossed it to me. Brought you this. Figured you wouldn't have one. I caught it, ripped the plastic off, and popped it open. How did you know I was here? I asked. You told me this afternoon you had a dinner thing and to wait for your text to finalize the edits, Sloane said casually, like she was discussing what she'd had for breakfast. By 11, I hadn't heard from you, so I just tracked the location tag you sent me earlier. I walked up right as you guys were talking. Khloe looked at Sloane, then back at me, a complicated mess of emotions in her eyes. Sloane finally turned to look at Khloe, gave her a polite nod, and said, "Hi." Then she waved a hand at me. "All right, umbrella delivered. I'm out. Big meeting tomorrow." She turned to get back in the car. "Hold on." I called out to her. "Mind dropping me off? My car is parked a few blocks down. I'll be drenched by the time I get there." Sloane looked at my car in the distance, then looked at Khloe, raising an eyebrow. "You sure?" I just pulled open the back door of the Uber and slid in. Khloe took a desperate step forward, right out into the downpour. In an instant, her hair was plastered to her face. "Liam," I looked at her through the open window. "Will we ever see each other again?" I thought about it, then leaned out the window slightly. "It's a pretty small city, so probably, but it's better if we don't," I said. "Work on fixing your bad habits, and I'll focus on living my life. When you finally got it all figured out and you meet the next guy who's willing to wait for you, just don't screw him over." Khloe stood frozen in the street. The rain poured down her face, making it impossible to tell what was rainwater and what were tears. I rolled up the window and looked at the driver. "Allicht, man. Let's go." The Uber pulled away smoothly. In the rearview mirror, Khloe's silhouette grew smaller and smaller until the rain swallowed her completely. Sloane leaned against the opposite door, tilting her head to look at me. "Are you really over her?" I wiped a stray raindrop off my face and looked out at the city's neon lights. The windshield wipers swung in a hypnotic rhythm. The streetlights fractured against the wet glass, bleeding into glowing, abstract smears. I've renounced my worldly sins and found enlightenment. I turned to look at her. Starting today, I'm doing charity work. I'll start with you. Want to grab some late-night food? Sloane snorted. Get out of here. I'm serious. I pulled out my phone to check the time. Smitty's Diner should still be open. They make amazing sliders. My treat. You're paying. I'm paying. All right then. Sloane nodded immediately, then tacked on, but we're going Dutch. I eat a lot. I don't want to bankrupt you. I blinked, then let out a genuine laugh. The Uber rounded a corner, and the rain started to lighten up. The city's skyline, freshly washed by the storm, looked incredibly sharp and clear, the distant high-rises glowing brilliantly against the night.